Hi, guys. We're a little bit nervous. Look, welcome to another episode of It Needs to Be Said. Slummy and I are a little bit stressed and a little bit excited. I'm mostly jazzed, but about 80% nervous because we're about to speak to an amazing guest.
Oh my gosh, you guys. We thought, you know what, we need to get more guests, we need to get more guests pumping, and we shot for the stars and we landed our dream guest, and it was a shock to our system, and here we are. And you guys get to listen to it. And honestly, I would be more excited to be you guys because you don't have to sit through the stress.
100%. Yeah, you just get to sit there and pause and reflect, and we just have to on the spot pretend like we're not starstruck. Yeah, we're speaking to, I mean, you guys already know because you've seen the title of this episode, but we're speaking to Patricia Weerakoon, and we are just, the thing is, we are obsessed with her. We've been obsessed with her probably for 2 decades.
Guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Eliza is a stan if I've ever seen it. She is a big stan. I mean, I'm a big fan of her as well, but like, I think this is like your world. This is your thing, So
It's true.
Eliza is like, this is a big deal for Eliza. So I think we all need to say a little prayer for her because she might lose her ability to speak when she's here.
You guys literally might watch me crumble because I just love her. And she doesn't know us. We might be absolute freaks to her, but we're just so excited. And really, this mini series that we're doing is just all about sex. And we want to talk about sex. We've cultivated that in our like sisterhood relationship where we talk about our sex lives and dreams for sex and, biblical views of sex quite comfortably now. But it didn't start that way. And we want to do this series because we feel like this comes up so often in obviously our marriages, but also in friendships, and then just like sex is everywhere in the world, And so we want to talk about this because it's so worth talking about. It's so worth pursuing, and it's not talked about enough. Like, should I stop?
Yeah.
Hi, Patricia.
Hello.
Good morning. Am I coming through okay for you?
Perfect. I think that's perfect.
Beautifully. Yes.
Well, Patricia, really, we want to just say thank you. You don't know us, but we have known you for quite some time. And
that's always a worry. It's always a worry because I wonder, what did they hear? What have they seen?
Only good things, great things.
Definitely. And we are happy for this recording to go however it goes. So any tangents are welcome. You can say anything you want here. We will welcome anything, any topics to talk about. So please feel comfortable to ignore the run sheet and just talk about anything.
No, I love the run sheet. You got like everything that anyone would ever want to know about sex in that.
That's true. We've squeezed a lot in, so we'll see how we go. And if we don't get through it, it's hopefully a good conversation starter for listeners to talk through. So I'm going to have a great sex life at the end of this episode.
Yeah, our husbands will thank you.
I can tell you so many things. I did a talk for men, which I usually don't do, a whole day kind of Q&A. And I had this email from one of the ladies in church saying, thank you. I'm getting a lot more cuddles and hugs after the talk.
Oh, beautiful.
I love that. Okay, well, I'll introduce us and then we can get started. Hello. You're listening to another episode of It Needs to Be Said, two sisters who like to keep it real. We might make you laugh. Hopefully we make you think. Guys, we are here for a very special edition of It Needs to Be Said. Today we are kicking off our 3-part mini-series on a topic that the church has often been silenced on or awkward about or shameful in, and maybe a little bit that maybe they've oversimplified it a little bit. And we believe that we should talk about sex, and that's what we're going to do today. We believe that sex is God's idea, it's his design, and as Christians we should be the ones speaking about it with conviction and clarity and even joy, right? So we are very happy to introduce a guest that we are very obsessed with, and we're just so stoked that she's here. Her name is Patricia Weerakoon, and she is a Christian sexologist. Patricia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Patricia, we kick off all of our episodes asking a bit of a silly question, or it can be serious as well, depending on your mood. We would love to know, what's something you've been thinking about lately?
Thinking about how I find time to do all the things that are partly duty, like writing things on gender and sex and and doing talks and preparing, but also doing the fun things like actually finding time for sex with my husband and craft and cooking and all the fun things I like to do.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that the story of our lives?
If you-
Time. It's so difficult.
If you could solve that puzzle for us and then get back to us on how to do it, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll have a talk to God when I get there, which will be sooner than you girls because I'm 79 years old.
Oh, I just love that you are 79 and you are passionate about talking about sex, which is just, it's just such an encouragement. And that's what, I guess our first question is, you're a Christian sexologist. And I think some of the listeners would go, that's a paradox or a tension, you know? And so we'd love to know, why do you think that the work that you're doing and talking about biblical sex, biblical theology for sex, why does it matter from a Christian perspective, the work you do?
Well, I'll give you the answer that I gave a professor some time ago. So, like, my background is I'm a doctor, a medical doctor, and I've got postgraduate education. I mean, I did my master's in Hawaii, working on gender and sexuality, 25 years academic at Sydney Uni, and director of a graduate program in sexual health. So, I have done a lot of research and study in sexuality, the science, the research. Now, when I was at the Kinsey Institute, which some of your listeners may be aware is one of the research study in sexology in US, and the professor there, the director, asked me just that question: how can you be a Christian and a sexologist? And this is my answer to him. I said, look, professor, you and I study sex and research it. But as a Christian, I have the privilege of knowing the creator of sex. And that is what makes it so wonderful. So I always say I bring my twin passion of sex and God together as a Christian sexologist.
You can't argue with that. It's amazing. Because it's, I think it was especially our generation, we've separated those things so much, you know, where it almost feels like it's a dichotomy. How can you talk about it? Or you can talk about it in a very God-designed sex, and that's where it ends. You don't want to quite invite him into the bedroom because that feels like, you know, it just feels a little bit scary. So it's just, it's so great that you are still so passionate after all these years. And I was rereading I'm reading your book, rereading it at the moment. And this book, The Best Sex for Life, you prepared me so well for marriage. You really did. You had no idea, but you prepared me so well to go into my honeymoon with almost like a levity, a lightness and laughter in getting to know my husband. And we both thank you for it, because you put language to something that we yearned for but weren't quite sure how to get there. And one of the things I reread in your book this morning was, you said that sex is good. The whole Bible says so. So we'd love to ask you, how do you link theology and biology, like you just said, your two passions, together?
Yeah, it's actually very simple, because the world tries to tell us that the Bible is sex negative, or that God just said, just don't do it. But you know, in my many years as a sexologist and a researcher, I have read lots of sex books. And as I always say, the Bible is right there at the top. Because you see, the Bible gives a beautiful story for sex right from the beginning. I mean, some of your listeners may not even be Christian. So, right from the first book of Genesis, you know, God created man. And then he looks at man and he's kind of just perfect. I mean, like the best ever looking man ever, you know, perfect six pack or shredded abs or whatever. And then he brings Eve to him. And man's first response is desire. It's like, oh, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. It helped you never seen another one. But, you know, that wonderful desire for man and woman is established in the first two chapters of the first book in the Bible, at creation. And God brings them together. And you have this beauty of nakedness and no shame, no guilt. It is That is what sex, and they are one flesh. And you see, the biology, and we are just sitting at the beginning here, the biology goes with this, the beauty of sex, when it is the purity of man and woman in the right place, in the right context. And then through the Bible, we see this man, woman, husband, wife coming together. Song of Songs, right in the middle, is full of erotic intimacy and whole body sexuality. Hey, it's in the Bible. I mean, and in between, there's stories in every other one we can go through if we have like all day to talk about it. And then right at the end, in the last book of the Bible, in Revelation, we have Jesus as the bridegroom, the perfect bridegroom. And all of us as the church, as the perfect bride. I always say, what a consummation, what a honeymoon for eternity that is going to be. So you see, the whole Bible gives us a beauty of sex. And in that beauty is boundaries. You see, God sets boundaries for beauty. But there is never in the Bible a place where there is a no without something better being offered. So whenever it says sex outside marriage is good, it's because there is something better in marriage, in commitment. That's what makes the Bible so beautiful, and that's what makes me so excited, because every bit of it, commitment, the covenant of one flesh, every bit of it has, we can show science and research that underpins the goodness of it. That's why I'm so excited about it.
It's great. It's such a good reminder.
You can hear the excitement as you talk about it. And as you were talking, I was getting excited. I was like, yes, sex is the best, you know? And I think like when you were just mentioning all biblical values around sex. So everything that you're saying, yes, it's scientific, but it's also, it's scriptural. And I think where we struggle a little bit is that a lot of the teaching around sex in the church is about abstinence before marriage. And then it's almost like the teaching around sex kind of stops for when you are married. And then there's barely any conversations unless you seek it out and do a podcast with Patricia Weerakoon. So where do you think the church, with all of that in mind that you just spoke about, boundaries and intimacy and the beauty of sex, where do you think the church is going wrong with some of the messaging around sex?
I would say it's not so much going wrong as not doing it. Unfortunately, the church isn't speaking into this space with the confidence that we as Christians, we have it, we need it, and we are not doing it. And you see, we need to be introducing it early in an age appropriate manner. We need to be teaching children, pre-teenagers, about how their body is so special. And we introduce the beauty of male, female bodies as God created it to be. And as they enter teens, we need to be fearless about speaking about the beauty of friendship between boy and girl, boy and boy, girl and girl, that just because you're two girls in friendship, it's not lesbian. The Bible is full of friendship. Bible is full of like gender roles of male and female. There's so much we can be talking into the space of the word, because you see, the really important thing is for us as Christians to remember that we don't disciple our children early. The world will disciple them. Friends, peers, and of course social media will disciple our kids. So we need to be starting early to speak biblical truth on sex and gender into our children's life. That's one. Secondly, we need to be fearless about talking, and I'm using the word intentionally, about talking about good sex into pre-marriage, into preparing couples. Like you said, you've got the book, but why the book? Why not from church? Why not from your pastor who's there for you. And yes, we wrote the book, but I talk to pastors who say, we just give them their book and say, come back if you have questions.
Oh, gosh. Email her if you've got questions.
And like, you're really confident, right? Go and
Right.
ask him or her for the
Yeah.
answers after you've been told that.
Right.
So pre-marriage and then after marriage, we need to make it a space in church that it's okay to not have a perfect marriage. We're not just talking even sex, that it's okay. We can't, it's almost idolizing the perfect marriage sexually and otherwise, and that's a danger. You
Right.
just need to go to the Bible to find the stories of marriages gone wrong. So we need to prepare that. And finally, I mean, we can go on talking about parenting and everything else, but finally, we need to make a space to talk about singleness
Right.
Right.
and the importance of, in a world that says you can't be satisfied unless you have sex, we need a place for singles to feel safe, to say, I'm single, I'm celibate, I need to learn how to deal with these desires, which the world says, I just have to have sex. But I don't want to. I'm a Christian. How do I find help? How do I keep away from pornography? We need, as a church, and I know this is a long answer, but we
That's
need
great.
to provide space for all this.
I love that. I love that
awesome.
it's across your whole lifespan. It's essential for your whole lifespan. And I think that what Slomi and I have been talking a lot about is for us to feel equipped to fearlessly talk about these things with our kids. We actually have to be able to speak about it fearlessly just within our marriages. And if it's hard to talk about the pursuit of good sex just with our spouse, can you imagine sitting across from my 16-year-old son one day? I'm going to be mortified. So it's actually a practice in cultivating a level of comfort and confidence in what God has gifted to us. So we wanted to pivot a little bit about, we understand the need to protect sex. I think the church has loudly screamed that about, let's protect sex. It's between a husband and a wife. But what about pursuing good sex in marriage? And look, Slomi and I forgot to preface this at the start, but to listeners, our content is usually very child friendly. For this episode, I think put your headphones on or put your kids in bed. I just think you don't want to have to explain certain words. So that's your warning. And now I'm going to say, in your book, you so honestly say at the very start, you said, the clitoris is in fact the only organ in the body whose sole purpose is to give pleasure. It does nothing else. And so we want to talk about, why does the pursuit, not just of sex and not just in an obligatory sense, but why does the pursuit of good sex matter? And why do so many women not enjoy sex?
Excellent question. We might park the clitoris for a moment. So let's press pause on the clitoris, right? And let's
Great.
talk about, firstly, good sex in marriage is very important. Now, having said that, every listener is going, oh no, what is good sex? And that is the question. What do we understand by good sex? Which means we have to understand what is sex. And here lies the real conundrum, the real confusion, is that we, as a culture, forget the church, as a whole culture, think that sex is equivalent, its only meaning of sex is coitus, intercourse.
Right.
Like
Right.
penis in vagina, dive for the pelvis, whatever, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, whatever language you want to use. But the reality is, we need to firstly consider and understand that sex is more than intercourse. It is whole body sensual intimacy. So a couple, man, woman, in marriage need to understand that the best sex is when, as husband and wife, they understand what it means to be intimate with each other. And so we have to, I drill down into couples' lives and I tell, especially Christian couples, how good is your spiritual intimacy.
Wow.
As Christian couples, are you spending time studying the Word of God? What's the use of saying the whole Bible is sex positive if you haven't bothered to read it, to understand God's love for His people before you, that vertical love, before you use it to understand each other and the love you have for each other? So, spiritual intimacy. Are you taking time to enjoy each other at an emotional level? I mean, the couples I work with, and if you looked at the book Good Sex, The Best Sex for Life, at the end we have a little questionnaire which said, how well do you know your spouse? Do you know what your spouse likes to do on a day off? So those emotional things, are you there for each other when you need to talk, communication? Then we talk of physical intimacy.
Right.
And in physical intimacy, in 1 Corinthians 7, I think it says, husband, your body belongs to the wife. Wife, your body belongs to the husband. It says your body. It doesn't say your genitals belong to each other.
Right.
Wow.
So the important thing is for whole body in intimacy. So we talk of sensuality. And in our book, Best Sex for Life, we have a whole chapter that talks about, appendix, on sensuality. It's about, forget that you have a penis, a vagina, and consider how wonderful the rest of your body is. So sometimes couples they ask me, how often should we have sex? I say 3 times a day, early morning kiss, a good pash or hug when you come back from work, and lie in bed together and hug each other and go to sleep. That's 3 intimacy episodes. And if one of them goes on to sex, well, maybe not first thing in the morning, but I mean, some people do first thing in the morning, but don't get late for work. So, it's just that if it leads to intercourse, great, but enjoy the intimacy. So that's the important thing.
Excellent.
So you're saying that there's what I've picked up on there is that you're saying there's a really clear link, or I guess an importance on intimacy as a whole in your relationship. So spiritual, emotional, all the sides of intimacy. And it's almost like we've become quite binary in what we believe intimacy is. We believe it's penis in vagina, penetration sex, but there's so much more beyond just that to increase your sexual intimacy as well.
It's so freeing. It's so freeing. Sorry, Patricia, you go ahead.
It's freeing. No, I'll talk forever, so keep interrupting me. The important, as you rightly said, it's so important to not concentrate on the mechanics, not to have this, I must have an orgasm, because we can talk about the difference between female and male sexual arousal. But many women enjoy sex, even if they're not having an orgasm. But men, because they ejaculate and the brain orgasm happen together, like for them, it's like, I'm in Sydney, so fireworks over the Harbour Bridge orgasm and ejaculate go together. For women, they may say, look, I have a really good experience, but not fireworks over Sydney Harbour Bridge, it's okay. So we need to not be goal-oriented, but enjoy the journey of sensuality. And there's so many places where this is important.
You touched a little bit there on the differences with male and females, and there's been a bit of talk around spontaneous versus responsive desire. So could you touch on that and just explain the difference in a simple way, and how understanding that can I guess, bless you in your sexual experience within marriage?
I love the fact, can you touch on it and explain in a simple way? Oh, sure. Let's have the 30-second version of the male female differences through life, okay?
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. It's so much of fun. You know, the reality is to understand that men and women are different. You know, yes, our genitals are different, which, by the way, is absolutely wonderful, because you said I'm allowed to go on a tangent, because the genitals, you know, I'm a
Please,
doctor. I
please.
also am an anatomist, and there's nothing so wonderful of God's creation than the genitals, because, you know, the plumbing and the nerve supply. I tell boys,
Right.
men, when I'm talking to men, I say, do you realize what a wonderful job God did on designing the male penis? Because it's
Right.
such a wonderful organ. It knows exactly what to do at what time. And the vagina is made such that it's so beautifully elastic. It can hold on to like the littlest penis, but it can expand to let the baby's head through. I mean, isn't that a
Crazy.
wonderful mechanical wonder that the creator did? Okay, that's it.
Crazy.
Now, that's the genitals. But talking about the brain and our
Mm.
sexual response,
Mm.
I'm glad you asked about spontaneous and what we call situational or reflexive arousal. See, for men in general, and I'm generalizing here, okay? For some men, the pattern can be more towards a female response, but for most men, they're very visual. So you walk into the bedroom, and before you take the first button of your blouse out, he's up and ready to go.
Oh, yes. So quick.
Literally. There you are. It's visual.
Mm.
Now, once he's aroused, the blood and nerves rush to the penis and he gets an erection. He feels desire at that time. So, desire followed by body arousal.
Right.
And if you have an outlet, I just stop there, because whether it's masturbation, here we are talking about intercourse. Once a man has the ejaculate and the orgasm, which as go together, he's done and dusted, ready for bed.
Right.
Now, women, their desire is twofold, like you right said. Sometimes the woman is the one who's swinging from the chandelier wanting sex. At other times, she goes into sex what we call sexually or emotionally neutral,
Right.
which means it's a bit like this. You're there and you're looking at your husband, and he's like, yeah, let's go for it, baby. And you're kind of going, I'm not really in the mood. I have to stack the dishwasher, to prep for tomorrow. What's we having for breakfast? But you're going, look, I love him. I
Yeah.
know the intimacy we have when we lie in each other's arms is amazing.
Right.
And he's happy tomorrow morning when we've had sex. So for
Wonderful.
many reasons, the woman would say, all right, darling, let's. Now, she's neutral. There are other times that she was like, woohoo, let's go for it. But let's take the time when she starts off emotionally neutral. Now, in the touching and holding and sharing of that whole body sensuality, remember we talked about whole body sensuality. The couple, especially, this is where communication is important, because you need to have already talked about and know each other's body. So as the man holds
Right.
and touches and stimulates her, and that's where the clitoris could come, the one we parked some time ago. So let's bring the clitoris out
That's
to the
right.
garage.
Let's pick it
This
back
is
up.
where, yep, knowing what turns your wife on. Sometimes it's touching the clitoris or oral sex. Other times it's just leave that button alone. Let's press some other buttons in my body. Whatever. Then the woman starts to get aroused. So we have
Right.
neutral, stimulation, arousal. The vagina starts moisturizing, and then she starts to feel desire. You see, it's almost the other way around. Neutral,
Right.
arousal, desire, and then she's like, yeah, let's go for it, baby. That's the kind of situational desire. Now, what would happen if the husband didn't understand that? He's already had his orgasm and he's turned around and gone to sleep. And the woman is like, wait a minute, I'm still just ready and ripe for action. So it's so important that we understand that there are times when the woman is ready to go, and there are other times when the woman takes the slow journey. Men need to understand this, women need to understand and not feel guilty and ashamed that they are slow burners. I say sometimes men are a bit like a microwave, one button, heated up, ready the meal. And women are more like a crock pot, a slow cooker, or like an oven that needs to be warmed up before the cake goes in. And we need to understand this. And as we mentioned some time ago, even when an orgasm, about 50% of women may not have an orgasm with intercourse, but they could have an orgasm with oral sex or gentle stimulation. Or sometimes just say, look, I rarely have an orgasm, but I really enjoy sex with you. And it is okay. It is okay. We need to understand that difference between men and women.
Definitely. I think that that's really freed up my husband and my sex life to just understand the differences between us. There's just something really almost enlightening about, especially in this season of life. Slomi and I've got 3 littles, 6 and under. She's got 2 and under. And most of our listeners are either preparing for parenthood or have toddlers that are just, manipulating us and abusing us all day. And so when my husband has in the past said to me, I'd love for you to pursue me in sex or initiate, that used to be, I guess, a little bit more of a sensitive topic when we were newlyweds and we were just wanting to impress each other. And now there's so much freedom in him realizing I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And so it's very rare for me at 7 p.m. when I just want to go to sleep to be ready to go, And so it takes a lot of intentionality on my part and on his part to realize I'm very rarely going to just be saying, let's go, baby, let's get on this ride. And that's okay. It's okay for him to say, hey, let's have sex, and for me to say, okay. And then I'll get excited as we go along. There's a lot of, freedom, and there's less pressure to perform in a certain way when you realize how your body works, that you actually can just relax into knowing your body is likely to respond in this pattern because that's how God designed it.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I'll just jump in as well. I think, yes, understanding that it works like that and then working with your desire pattern to sort of help the situation, because I know for me, I know that I'm very much responsive desire, not spontaneous, the term that you used. And so because of that, we schedule in, or I put it in my calendar, tonight we're doing it. And so then I can already start preparing myself. Maybe I start, listening to some nice music or trying to relax. And I guess just starting that process before just getting into bed so that it's not a shock to my system that now we're having sex.
I think that's really important because unfortunately, the cultural thing is that sex has to be spontaneous. It's all the YouTube and Instagram and everything, The couple meet. They never met before, but they meet at the pub or wherever, and then they go to the bedroom and they're ripping each other's clothes off and they fall on the bed, and, it all happens just like that. And that's how it has to be in marriage. Like, hello, you've got kids and you've got tomorrow's breakfast or lunch or whatever to think about it. So, planned sex, as you rightly said, is often the best.
Right.
And, so I often tell couples, I said, it's like sitting down and saying, darling, shall we plan to be spontaneous at 7 o'clock this Saturday? So,
It's just it's so true, because when you've got, it's at every stage of life, I'm assuming it's a challenge to make sure that you are sexually intimate, but there are so many things that just help it be more successful. And for me, there's nothing more unattractive than coming out of putting our kids in bed and I'm worn and I'm disheveled, and then my husband being like, all right, let's have sex. And I just think I could not be less turned on right now.
Yeah.
And even the other day we were trying to be intimate, and then my my son's been having a bit of a hard time. And I said to him, I thought of a really good consequence for our son while we're trying to be intimate. And he's like, stop, not now. Just think about it later. But because I'm still getting aroused, I'm not even aroused yet, my brain can still be thinking about all these things. And so I guess my next question is about what helps set us, what can help set us up as Christian couples that want to have a good sexual experience. And I want to quote you in your book. You could probably quote this to me, Patricia, but you have this beautiful 2 sentences that says, "This shared intimacy of a long-term union brings lovers closer together, potentially triggering a virtuous cycle. The more you make love, the closer you feel, and the closer you feel, the more you make love, and so on. No wonder the writer of Proverbs encourages a young man to be not just satisfied, but intoxicated." So how does that help inform what sets us up for a good sexual experience? Because even though a lot of women feel unsatisfied sexually, we long to have good sexual experiences.
The first thing is, as we've kept repeating, sex is more than intercourse. It's about whole body experience. It's about intimacy. Sadly, many men go into marriage thinking sex is all about intercourse.
Right.
Sadly, this is underpinned by the level of pornography. And all the research tells us that porn use in the church is no different from porn use out there in the culture. The difference is that people using porn in the church feel guilty and ashamed, whereas people outside who are not Christians go, "What's your problem? I use porn." So we've got men who have been influenced by pornography as to what sex is. And then they get married and they come with these expectations. And women have been told, it's about purity and, your husband is going to somehow provide this environment to give you the best sex. So we've got this almost dissonance of expectation. So the most important thing in having good sex is communication.
Right.
And this is why premarital sex or, after marriage, having a space to talk about it is so important. So that is the first thing. It's a communication. The second thing is I'm now going to dig a bit into science and say that, look, the reality is that the more intimacy, especially bodily intimacy, and I'm not even saying intercourse, bodily intimacy is a binding act. Even if there is nothing called casual sex. Sex is never casual. When you are intimate, whether it be just even hugging someone, the level of a particular chemical in our brain, oxytocin, vasopressin, goes up. Now, it's the same chemical that bonds you to your baby when the baby is suckling at the breast.
Wow.
The mother bonding with the baby bonds man and woman when they are intimate. So there's nothing casual about sex. You bond even if you're outside your marriage bond. So whether it's extramarital or in marriage. But in marriage, the more the same couple are intimate, the more this hormone causes them to bond. The research with this hormone is amazing. I was talking to a couple a few days ago where I was telling them that even when if the father holds the newborn close to him, they bond. We used to think it's only the mother and the baby, but no, the more the father holds and cuddles the newborn, the more that bonding happens at brain level. So the more a couple are intimate, the more they will bond. And the more they bond, the more joyous the intimacy become. Now, like I'm looking at you two young ladies on the screen, and I'm thinking, like, you're young and tight and taut and everything's in the right place. In the Proverbs, which you just quoted, where the father tells the son all this advice about good relationships, and he says, be satisfied with the wife of your youth. A young doe, a deer, may her breasts satisfy you always and be intoxicated in her love. there comes a time when your wife of your youth is not able to pounce around or bounce around like a doe or a deer because the arthritis gets in the way.
Mm.
And those beautiful perky breasts are
Ugh.
now gravity challenged and
Mm.
traveling towards the South Pole.
I'm well
So
on my way to that, by the way. Breastfeeding.
even then,
Mm.
when you're like in your 70s or 80s, if you have built those bonds early,
Right.
then you will be enjoying each other's body. Even when you're looking and saying, whoa, I remember when that wrinkle down there used to be up here. And even then you enjoy. And this is particularly important that we remember because women, especially, sadly, live in this culture of body beauty.
Mm.
And so when a woman goes through having babies, the body changes,
Mm-hmm.
menopause, the body changes,
Right.
and there is this level of insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to still care for me? Or is he going to be looking at pornography and expecting a porn star? Which never was a porn star, and now I'm even more less so as menopause.
Right.
See, so the man who has bonded to his wife
Mm.
and the woman who has bonded will look at each other, even in old age, and see that beauty of the husband or wife who walk down the aisle towards you.
Right.
Mm.
And that is what true love is. I tell people, falling in love is one thing, but staying in love is this action of
Right.
continuing intimacy. And
Mm.
sometimes, there may be times of low intimacy and times when you don't feel that bond. And I say that's the time when you look at your husband or your wife and you think, you know what? This is not what I married.
Mm.
But then I tell couples when I used to do couples counseling, that's the time you got to kiss the frog and turn the frog back into the prince or princess
Mm.
because it becomes an action,
Right.
not always just a spontaneous. And you got to keep that
Mm.
flame going in your marriage.
Wow.
Wow, that's so cool because it's so true. Like sometimes I'll be honest, I'll just be so not keen to be intimate, and it will be that sort of response that you were mentioning before of no, but I love him, so we'll be intimate, and then we do it, and I'm like, that was the best. I want to do it again. It feels like instantly you've kind of had that increase in intimacy overall, like you said, in your relationship. And then it's like a self-fulfilling or like a positive spiral. But are you saying then as well that that can work in the inverse where the less you do it, the less you want it, and it can kind of create a cycle as well? Okay. And so I guess we've touched a bit on the neuroscience of it and the relationship impact of low desire. But do you think that these sort of negative experiences of sex can also be spiritual?
Great question.
Intimacy is a whole holistic thing. And therefore, when we talk of, yes, intimacy is a physical thing, it is underpinned by the goodness of sex in marriage, as the Word of God has told us. And therefore, we can have so much of if we look at a world view and you believe a world view that sex is something I must have because I deserve it. And if two people are saying, I am who matters,
Right.
now that is completely against God's word.
Right.
Because true sex is about looking at your partner and thinking, how can I honor you and care for you?
Wow.
So that's where the spiritual battle comes in. When the God's view, the biblical view, the good view of sex in marriage is other focused, honoring, and caring. But Satan is always ready to tempt us to think, I deserve it. I deserve good sex. You have to give it to me. That is selfish self gratification, following a world view of the big word we use is individualism. And, that's what the world says. The Bible says the best sex is other focused, relational. And that's the spiritual battle that will always be there in any marriage in our culture.
It's so countercultural, you know. It's
Yeah.
this episode is not an episode that's going to sell, you know, because it's so countercultural that, and it's an image of our life as Christians, to lay aside your rights for the sake of another. You know, it's the gospel, and so it's so convicting for me, because even I would say, oh, we've got a pretty good sex life, but I think, oh my gosh, I can always improve in how much I honor my husband. You know, is it in Proverbs as well, where it says to treat your husband like the king? You know, that's how you treat him. And I just think, oh my gosh, Elisa, that's also in your sex life. Pursue your husband. You know, just because an orgasm is more difficult for me to come by doesn't mean my husband always has to be pursuing me and honoring me first. You know, I can pursue him in with the same love that he pursues me. So, oh gosh, Patricia.
Oh, you've convicted me, Patricia.
And you know, darlings, you know, young marrieds need to understand that sex is not always got to be like something you work on. There are times when you serve each other in a what I call a quickie way, you know, like a drive-through McDonald's. You know, you want a meal, you know, it's
Correct.
quickie, it's okay, it's not a great thing for me, but okay. And other times it's this three-course French or whatever cuisine you enjoy, you know, and that's okay. So there is a place. And again, I go back to this is where communication. And you know, you kind of tell your husband, oh, today let's make it a quickie.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
And another time, you know, let's make the time, you know, let's get someone to babysit the kids while we have a whole evening to set the mood and get the massage oil out and light
Candles.
candles, candles, which you must remember to blow out after you have your orgasm. And, you know, set the mood and have a nice meal and get some good wine. And that's a time, a place for that. And a time and a place for the drive-through quickie.
That's great. It's also a good reminder that sometimes sex can be vanilla and just very, God designed it. So even when it's vanilla, it's glorious. You know, He still designed it as glorious. And other times it can be spontaneous and fun. And maybe you're listening to R&B music like we like to listen to, you know, and it's more exciting and exotic, and both are still good. It can still be good sex. So,
and I wonder if the question isn't like what kind of sex you're having, but like how's the intimacy that's being built in those experiences. And so, okay, well, we have spoken for way too long already. That was meant to be 30 minutes. We've gone over the time. So we're going to wrap up part 1 of this series. We've explored a bit about the why behind the design of sex and how our bodies and brains are wired for connection. And now we're going to start looking at, I guess, what sin has done to that experience. And we're going to be talking about shame, baggage, and how to rebuild intimacy when things feel complicated in part 2. So stay tuned for that.